Ideas from the New Poetry.
All right, welcome back to I believe this is the seventh installment of Ideas from the New Poetry, hosted by Jon Bernys and Leonardo Marcos, where we discuss the future of poetry in a radically unpoetic society. I'm very excited to talk about this topic that we'll be talking about. In fact, I've kind of been probably more excited about this than any of the other topics. So, last installment and in this installment, we're going to discuss the future of poetry by going back in time to the 16th century to discuss a foundational text on poetry called An Apology for Poetry or A Defense for Poetry by Philip Sidney, where he brings together some of the most cohesive intellectual arguments for the superiority of poetry. And last week we talked about information versus motivation, how poetry could be a powerful force for education in that respect because it combines the two. So today we're going to talk about another combination that poetry masters, which is between philosophy and history. Now this goes way back, way before even Philip Sidney. This actually goes back as far as you can go in poetry, which is Aristotle, in his book called Poetics. And I'm going to read to you this excerpt that summarizes what we'll be talking about perfectly from Aristotle's Poetics. So Aristotle writes, "The true difference is that one relates to what has happened, the other what may happen. Poetry, therefore, is a more philosophical and a higher thing than history, for poetry tends to express the universal, history the particular." And I absolutely love that quote. And of course, Philip Sidney in the book said exactly the same thing. And his highlight of this topic goes as follows from his book, Defense of Poetry. "The philosopher, therefore, and the historian are they which would win the goal, the one by precept, the other by example, but both, not having both, do both halt." It's a little more complicated way of addressing that topic. So yeah, we'll be talking about poetry's mastery of merging philosophy and history. What did happen, what does happen, and what can happen, and what should happen. So Leonardo, thank you. First of all, thank you for doing this with me again. And so the first question I have for you is, why don't we just look at one virtue at a time? And of course, I think every poet, no matter how much they disagree on the details, every poet agrees that courage is probably the highest virtue. I know you think that, I believe that. So let's go with courage. If philosophy tells us what courage is, and history tells us people that have acted courageously, what can poetry tell us about courage that neither of those can? These are going to be some big questions, so.
Yeah, I think to be, can you hear me well? It's okay?
Oh, I can hear you just fine, yeah.
Okay. I think that to be a poet is already to be very courageous. In two ways. One way because to be a poet is not easy. As I said the last time, to live in the society, in a modern society, where the most important thing is the material world, if you come with a poetry as a poet with a spiritual feelings, and only with that, mainly what poets are doing when they wrote or when they write poetry, poems, that's limited a lot for the society. This means that in the society you can be completely outside of the society. So to accept that is already something that you need a lot of courage, because the easiest way should be that you can at any moment choose the material world, what is logic and what is the way that any human have to follow. But you don't choose the poetry, it's poetry who choose you. And when you're a poet, it's very difficult, this material world. And this is why you have really to fight to exist, to fight to be understood, because poetry is something very complicated. Already not a lot of people are reading books today, but to read poetry is even more complicated, because you have to express, you express yourself with some allegories, metaphors, and this is not what you're used in the language every day, the normal language. So all these need a lot of courage to accept that you're a little bit different, and that in the material world you're going to be judged even as a person who is not able to be in the society. Really, it's something very difficult. But in the same time, what is very strange is that poetry, as I said the last time, have to do with reality, have to do with real things of every day. And for example, yesterday they celebrated in Spain, they celebrated the death of Federico Garcia Lorca. It's 90 years that he got shot by the fascists who killed him. And there was a lot of things in Instagram and a lot of tributes to this poet. Why they killed him? Not because only he was an anti-fascist, not only because he was on the Republican side. They even say that it have to do, certainly, and it's certainly true, with jealousies between families, where he was from one family and another one. They took this pretext to kill him. But still, they killed him. So that means that if they want to kill him, and what the soldiers they did, is that the poet is in the material world too, because otherwise they shouldn't kill him. They should let him live, somewhere in his world, in his spirit, But that means that the poetry and the poets, they are also involved in the material world, but in a different way. And this different way, what is more complicated to understand, brings a lot of hate or a lot of love, but it brings a lot to the society. As I said many times to you, John, one of the most important poems of the resistance in the 20th century, when it was the Second World War, was "Freedom, I Write Your Name," from Paul Eluard. This sentence, this verse, has been the bandier, the flag of the freedom, of the resistance. And it was at the beginning a poem for his wife, Nush, who was very beautiful. Man Ray did a lot of beautiful pictures from her. She was the muse of Eluard. But this means that poetry is not so disconnected from material world, but it's more dangerous. It's more dangerous because You're outside, in a way, because you don't bring so much for the material world when you're a poet, but in the same time, they can kill you. Or even they can take your verse and make a flag from what you have done, or what you have written, or the way how you live. This means that there is a lot of courage to be existing as a poet. Because even if a lot of people have sympathy, they say, you're a poet, that means you're dreaming all the time, you know. In fact, it's not really only like that it happens, because you're confronted with a lot of things what they show you that you're not in the system. And this is very difficult, because you're not marginal in a way. You're not a social marginal. You didn't choose to be, I don't know, a Rolling Stone or whatever, you know. No, but the only fact that you have some kind of feelings on the way how you write these feelings with poems, it's already enough to be a judge or to be accused or to be a flag or a bandier. Depends on the people who choose you for that. So the courage is very important to be a poet. And the other thing is that poets are also fighters. They are not only, you know, being in the house writing, you know, connected with anybody or living alone. This is a cliche, what a lot of people think. But no, a lot of poets are very involved with politics, with history, with movements of the cultural, not only cultural, but even in the war, many things. And many times we can see that the poets are the most involved. Strange enough. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, of course, not Lorca. Lorca was not so involved, but the killing. They judged that he was a Republican and not a fascist. It was clear. Mm-hmm. And they were right in that way, personally killing, because the poetry from Lorca is not really political or militant poetry, but it's more neutral. But even like that is dangerous. But I was thinking about Lord Byron. Lord Byron get out of the system completely. They throw him out because the way he was living, the fact that he was a poet, the lords, he was a lord, but they throw him out, you know, and what I can understand, because he had a life very unusual, very decadent, you know. But what he has done is that he took a weapon and he fight, defending the Greek people against the Turkish. And all these surrealist poets, Aragon, Eluard,
Robert Desnos,
they all fight, all of them, they fight. Hernandez in Spain also he fight. So you see always that poets are involved also in the society, in the history. And it's not a mystery, because when you look what the poets they were when it was in another time, what they were exactly, their existence. Homer, what he did, he wrote everything what happens in the war. He was the first témoin, witness for to see what happens, you know, and he described everything. And with him, we discover everything. The same with Virgil, but also the same with Ocean, you know, in the Celtic mythology. They were always connected with the war, with the history. And this is also courage, because it's not easy to be involved with the words, describing the war, describing horror, crimes, doing mythology, even if we want, but all this is the sign of the courage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my next question is, can poetry somehow, it's kind of a strange phenomenon. Can poetry make certain concepts like that, stuff that's abstract, like freedom, truthful, goodness, the good, the true, the beautiful, justice, can it make it more attainable by putting it through history, by giving it a human face? Yeah, and I like what I think my favorite example of that is something that G.K. Chesterton, something he said. Uh, I remember he said one time that, do you know why fantasy books are always the best-selling books rather than factual books or nonfiction books? And he said because they're the most true. And I think there's something to be said about that.
I'm not sure that that poetry can make concepts, because concepts are made mainly by the philosophers. I believe more that the idea of concepts, create concepts, is something connected with the philosophy. I think poets are going in another way, another direction. They don't bring really concepts.
What do they bring?
Sometimes you can have, of course, you can always say that the illuminations from Rambo, it's a concept of the way of feel the things, but I think the morality for the poetry is very complicated, because I think they are going more behind the good and the bad. They don't think really what is good, what is bad. They go outside that. They prefer to choose the emotional part and to see what's going on with the emotional part, with the sensitive part, more than to structurate an idea. What's more on the philosophers to do that, go on the logical thinking. Poet feel his things and express what he feels with a language, different language, but it's an expression. I'm not sure that the expression have to do with morality, have to do with concepts, what is good, what is bad, and can help the society. But in the same time, it happens because, as I said, liberté, j'écris ton nom, freedom, I write your name.
Eluard, yeah.
Even if it was for a girl or a girlfriend, it has been the flag of the resistance. So it's the interpretation of that, what can be this. But, poets are not really people very normal. The morality, we talked last time about
yeah, I mean, we talked about last week. We talked about the poet Maudit. So, and the very
if you have yes, but if you take Bukowski, Byron, he had a relation with his sister when she was married. That not really good for the morality. Pierre Louis, I don't know if you know Pierre Louis. I love him very much. He was with he was with a lot of girls, and he had a relationship with the two sisters of with two sisters, this kind of thing. So I'm not so clean, and Villon, François Villon, was a criminal.
Who? Sorry?
François Villon is very important. He was in the Middle Age, the main poet of the French literature. But he was a criminal. It's in a jail. It's you know, it's complicated. Oh, you're going to say yes, any artist is like that. But the poets, they are very special. Huh? It's complicated with the way how they move in the society, the way how they move with love. It's not so easy.
Yeah, we talked about the poet Maudit, which the meaning of that is like pretty much to go outside of society, to go against the common ideals, the common moral. So.
But they call him Maudit, you know, because not only because they were living in a certain way of life, but they call him Maudit because nobody gave any interest of them after they died. But in the time that they were living, nobody was interested about them. Who was interested about Arthur Rimbaud? They don't give a fuck. Sorry to say that. It's bad English. But they didn't get any interest for his poetry. Verlaine too, Mallarmé too. That's what they call him Maudit, because they get so often very poor. This is what they call Maudit. And of course, you're right, what the way how they were living, the way what they wrote were very scandalous, yes. If you read Baudelaire or Rimbaud, it's
yes, something
very scandalous. Not everything, but a lot of things are very shocking for the people and for the society. Can be very shocking. The way how they describe what they feel, the fire that's coming from their brain, you know, it's maybe it can be awful, you know. Yes, a poet can be courageous and it can be dangerous. Dangerous in a way that is completely difficult. It's difficult to understand that. It's very dark.
Yeah. And another way I think this approach to poetry can go in the wrong direction is and I don't think, and this is not just poetry, this is basically every fantasy, every fiction. I'm talking about novels, I'm talking about movies, I'm talking about songs even, is that they I feel like it can go too far to, especially now that we're talking about morals and concepts which are not really from poetry, they're from philosophers, is creating unrealistic ideals. So in the book that we discuss about, Sidney believed poetry could teach through examples without being confined to one historical example or one historical fact. Do you think there should be a boundary with poetry, there should be a boundary between revealing deeper truths without taking it too far to create unrealistic ideals for people that read poetry? Because obviously, the history has shown over and over again that poets are not perfect people, and there's no such thing as perfect people. But when we implement these things, like someone being good, someone being true, someone being beautiful, it can create that unrealistic expectations in people.
I think the only thing what the poet is looking for is the beauty.
Beauty.
The rest have no importance for him. The only thing important is the beauty.
That's what Dostoevsky said.
Yeah.
Yeah, beauty will save the world.
Dostoevsky, but a lot of poets. And even Bukowski was looking for beauty.
Yeah. Beauty will save the world. That's what he said.
Because when he was, yeah, absolutely. When he was even describing prostitutes, girls, certainly not very beautiful, but he make that beauty, make that life is even the worst, even the most awful things, make it beautiful, make it something very
Yes.
attractive.
That's
Like Pasolini. Pasolini was a poet, and his movies are like that. You have some people who are not very beautiful, I mean, and, I mean not in the Hollywood way,
yeah,
but
that's
but they are beautiful, and what you describe is beautiful. Yes, it's for me poetry. If it was a movie, it was Hackathon from Pasolini. You have a kind of very poor people in a very poor surrounding, like a very bad area where
yeah.
everything is almost destroyed. But suddenly put the music from Bach,
Yeah.
the religious music there. And then when you see that, when you hear that, and you see that in the same time in this sequence, you see that these people were, in a way, awful because of that. Some of them are robbers, other ones are criminals, the other ones are prostitutes, but suddenly you get belief. And this is the miracle of
Yes.
the.
That is, yeah, I didn't think about it that way. And I've, now that you've talked to me about this in greater detail, I didn't realize, I now like fully comprehend how common this is, that poets talk about all about beauty and how to make the world a more beautiful place. But the majority of poets, even the most, canonized, most read poets in the world today, came from environments that were really anything but beautiful. I just brought up Robert Desnos like 5 minutes ago, and Robert Desnos was in a concentration camp,
Yeah.
and Charles Bukowski lived in some of the poorest areas of Los Angeles, California, was abused as a child.
Yeah.
Dostoevsky was locked, was in an imprisonment camp as well in Russia, and was actually they. It's a very interesting story actually. So the people that held him prisoner decided this was a common practice for Russian prisoners. They took him out and told him he was going to be executed and shot him, but it wasn't a real bullet. It was really just to psych them out and to scare them. And he survived it because they didn't put bullets in it, but it scared him so badly that he developed epilepsy, which is possible. And then he had seizures for the rest of his life. It's a very strange thing that poetry is all about beauty, but the people that have mastered poetry that come to mind to us, Robert Desnos, Bukowski, even Pablo Neruda, Ezra Pound, Dostoevsky, they all came from profoundly unbeautiful environments. So it's almost like poetry is an escape haven medium of some sort.
Yes, absolutely. It's exactly what I think is that the poets are able to make beauty anywhere. And this is what they are looking for. Even when they say that it's not that, it is that. For example, I spoke with Michel Houellebecq. Michel Houellebecq is a very famous poet still living in France. Very important poet. He's also writing some romance, and it's very popular. You can see it very often on TV. And I spoke with him in a bar, and we were talking to each other, and I said to him, well, you're often to Spain, isn't it? Yeah, I love Spain. I've been living there in Spain, and I wrote a book there, and it was very nice. And he described to me the most awful city of the area from Alicante, what is Benidorm, as something very beautiful. Not beautiful because it's beautiful because got some buildings or whatever. No, because
Yeah.
what if there was beauty there? And this is very interesting because everybody is according, who has a little bit of taste, that Benidorm is awful. It's to destroy. Imagine it's destroying a small village, Spanish village, very charming. And suddenly they put some buildings very ugly, you know. Doesn't fit at all with the culture of this part of Spain, doesn't fit with anything, you know. But Houellebecq feels something very beautiful, feels something, an emotion, and he described it as well. And for me, it's not even ironical or cynical, it's real for me. And we love that. The same described that one of the most beautiful things what he find when he was there in this part of Spain. You have to know that this part of Spain you can find a lot of beautiful things too. Huh? You know, there is history. You can see monasteries, you can see church, you can see old houses, you know. Well, you have everything to, if you're a little bit aesthetic and interested about culture, you discover things. No, but what you find the most important thing and emotional in this day, in those days when he was there, it was to go with a car on the road, in the modern road, you know, the autoroute. Just that. And he felt something very strong there and powerful. You know, I felt the same myself. When I was adolescent, I remember that I was in the very ugly suburbs, walking, you know. Well, I prefer Le Marais, where I've been living, you know. It's so beautiful in Paris, this area, you know. But I can also find an emotion in places where usually they are not considered as beautiful. And because the beauty brings suddenly this power, you know. And maybe this is why there is a courage in that. You know, you described so well what happens to Dostoevsky, the kind of gulag, what happens to Desnos in the concentration camp. I described to you Lorca and Miguel Hernandez, who have been dying in a jail in Spain, you know, because the fascists, they put him there. But these people, looking for beauty, they are maybe the fighters of the beauty.
Yes.
And the fight of the beauty is maybe what's going to save the world, as
Yes.
Dostoevsky said.
Yeah, it's almost like they're Zen masters, almost. You know, appreciating the beauty no matter where. Because I did study Zen Buddhism for years, especially when I was an adolescent. I studied Zen Buddhism, and I remember a Zen master, his name is Zoketsu Norman Fisher. He told me, to the mind that has no clouds, every season is a good season. And that's kind of how I'm seeing all this approach with poetry. These people in these people in situations that would not be considered beautiful by a large part of the population. And here they are doing everything they can to find beauty in them. That's sort of how I almost interpret it. And so my next question is it's a little more complicated one, but I have no problem simplifying it. So, okay. If the notion is true that poetry combines universal truths of philosophy with lived examples, materialized examples of history, do you think poetry can offer a special form of knowledge that neither philosophy nor history can offer by themselves?
You mean that poetry maybe can bring something what philosophers other disciplines, they can't, they
Yeah.
don't have.
Yeah, because as we talked about today in the last episode, poetry combines a lot of things. Last week we talked about poetry combining information and motivation, moving someone and teaching someone at the same time. And now we're talking about philosophy and history. Yeah, does poetry offer something that neither of these can by themselves?
If I understand well, you think that maybe poetry can bring something what philosophers they can't teach, they can't, or that give to the philosophers a new knowledge or something
Yes.
like that.
But everyone, knowledge, philosophy, history, all of them. So,
See, yes, for all of them, yes, of course.
yeah.
I think so. I think so. Even for mathematics, because I remember that was a scientist who was, when he was a child, very important. I think it's a Nobel. When he was a child, he was sick, and the doctor said to him, please, I'm going to put you an injection. Don't worry, it's very short time. You just count 10, 9, in 10 seconds, it will be gone. And of course, the doctor, to help him not to suffer, they say, tell him, in 10, 9, 8, you know. And this child said 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. I don't know how you say in English. -1, -2, -3.
Yeah. Yeah.
5. I mean, a poet can find that.
Yes. Yes.
Because a poet can say, oh, there is positive numbers, but there is also negative numbers.
Philosopher, yeah.
It's a poem. It's a poem to say that. But imagine that it's true in the science.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this example is the proof that a poet can find the positive and the negative numbers. What's really what the science, without poetry, they believe, you know, they teach. But the poet can find things that nobody think about that. But
Yes.
it's a metaphor, it's a symbol, you know. But if you look well, the symbol, suddenly it's a reality, scientific reality, mathematical reality. Imagine, it's terrible. And of course, you can say the same with the history. You can say the same with the history. The poets are prophets.
Yeah.
You know, when Michel Houellebecq said that in a book, he described, it's a very poetic book, and he described some terrorism, you know, Islamism, you know, terrorism. Well, he seems he's a bit mad, you know, and it happens after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It happens after that. And many times the poets, they discover and find things what are going to happen in history. So why it's important to listen them also for the historians is that sometimes the poets can find things what you don't think about it.
Yeah.
Of course, you have to I mean, you have to translate, you know, because you come, a poet's coming and say, the positive word, the positive numbers and the negative numbers. No, of course, if you say it like that, you have to build that after that in the science, you know, to explain that there is a logic in that. But this feeling can teach a lot. The same, of course, with the philosophers. But philosophy and poetry are very close. Huh? As we said last time,
Yes.
it's a different way. Of course, it's a different discipline. It's not exactly the same, because philosophy teaches you to be courageous. A poet don't have to learn to be courageous. You don't have the choice. It's a very big difference. So, but yes.
Yeah, it's to catch
And,
things.
I prove it to you if I write the positive numbers, the negative numbers in a poem, it's a real poem. But in the science, it's proof.
Yeah, it's like what Leonardo da Vinci said. Art. The goal of the artist is to catch things that most people only catch a glimpse of. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's definitely the goal. It seems that it's to learn how to look at things as well. And let's see. I have just a few questions left.
Yeah.
So how come, at least to artistic audiences and poetic audiences, why do, connecting to philosophy again, why do philosophical ideas become more understandable, more intuitive through poems than through arguments? And even like in the Bible and stuff, like Jesus, teaching in parables, rather than just reasoning, teaching in parables. So
Mm.
it's a very universal phenomenon. So
Yeah. Well, I think the same. Because, I mean, Jacques Lacan, the psychanalyst, he said
who?
something I
Sorry.
like very much. Is Jacques Lacan.
Lacan. Yes, Lacan.
He
Jacques
said,
Lacan.
unconscious speak to inconscious. The subconscious speak to the subconscious of another person. In fact, you and me at the moment we are talking maybe without words, with the brain. It's completely strange to say that in that way, because you can see that it's possible, the languages, the words and nothing else. No, because as I said to you, the beginning started with the dream, the subconscious, and not with the verb.
Yeah.
So this explains a lot of things. That means that, I remember I was writing that because I'm writing a book about, it's a friend of mine, he's quite famous here in France. He's very busy with rock music. He has a very good emission in France. And he said always to me, you have to write the story of your life, so important, blah, blah, you so many things. And I said, all right, I'm going to start. And there is one thing what I loved so much is that I remember, because writing, it remember me this, what happens to me. I was doing an event. In this event, it was in a very beautiful place. And this event is, in France, we have called that Nuit Blanche, like the book from Dostoevsky. And it happens all evening, all artists, they can do something. And they invited me to do that, So what I did is I did a performance with reading electro poetry, and there were some dancer girls, giving my poems, to the people who are coming. And it was a group of rugbymen, this kind of people where they never usually have read any book, that means what we suppose, because you never know, it can be one who have done it, but in general, they are more interested in beers and in watching football and eating chips, and they make always a big mess, how it is, and this kind of people that are a little bit hooligans, they're making a mess all the time, and of course suddenly they see the poetry. I imagine that usually they could react extremely negative or going away or whatever. No, what happens there is that they start to listen, they start to get hypnotized about the words, hypnotized about the dancer, hypnotized about the projections everywhere of my poems, that they get in completely, like they were drunk, like Dionysus. They were completely losing their mind, but in a positive way. And they start to dance, and to feel something, and like it was magical for them. Imagine these people that usually talk about an audience, but it's the opposite of the audience, what they are going to come here to listen poetry, and that's these people, they were feeling the poetry. Maybe they are not able to explain it or to describe it or to read, but they feel what happens. And it's more powerful even. And this, for me, brings a lot. As I say to you, Dionysus, the Greeks, they were bringing the poetry by that way. And this is why it was so beautiful and so powerful. And this is why I'm looking for a new poetry. What is an old one? Very old one. What I bring again, like a renaissance. This is the new poetry. It's not people, like I see here sometimes in the market, and they look so poor and miserable. They are there, they sell even they sell a book, and you can also buy a little bit of confiture, and what is this miserable thing? Poetry needs the power, needs to be the central, of the feelings. And this is why, in my way, don't say that I do a lot, but in my way, if you come to one of my performances, one of my events, you feel something very strong. And whatever, if you're an intellectual, or whatever, if you're a hooligan, you feel it. And this is what I love. And this is the subconscious, speaking to the subconscious. And what is poetry is the language of the subconscious, like the surrealists, they say.
Mm-hmm. And it's another complicated, big question. If philosophy searches for universal truths and history records particular lives, can poetry show us how the universal exists inside one individual's life? Does that show that that what is the most personal is also the most universal?
I think poetry is personal and universal.
Yes, I agree.
You agree with that?
100%, 100%.
I'm not sure about that. That you think that because it's both, and you don't have so many possibilities to have both.
No, you don't.
You agree? Not in history, not in a little bit maybe in philosophy, but even like that. But poetry brings the possibility to have personal and universal
Yeah.
in the same time. And this is incredible.
Yeah, music and dance are the only two I know of, probably.
Yeah. And I love Oscar Wilde. You know who is Oscar Wilde?
Sorry?
Do you know Oscar Wilde?
Yes, Oscar Wilde. Yes, I do.
Sorry for my accent.
You're fine.
He said in a book, I said the beginning is the dream. He said the beginning is the lies.
Yeah.
He was not, poetry is not only looking for truth, no, it's looking for beauty. And to find beauty, you have to lie.
Yes. Yeah, Picasso said pretty much the same thing, Pablo Picasso. He said that art is a lie that leads to the truth.
I love so much Picasso.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
I love so much him. He was really incredible. He has sentence terrible,
Yes,
yeah,
at the same time.
He was so clever.
Yeah.
Today they say bad things about his life. I mean, well, certainly are true, you know. But yes, Oscar Wilde, when he said the beginning is the lie, sorry, is because he said also that the best way to see a person, the reality of a person, the truth of the person, is if he wear a mask. Imagine. So beautiful, no?
Yeah.
I'm not a dandy, so I'm not so much into that. I love that because it's funny. No, I think more that's the dream.
Oscar Wilde was one very funny person. Yeah.
He was
One of my,
so charming person,
yeah, he was,
so clever, so special, so
yes.
intelligent.
Yeah. Yeah. What an extraordinary way to approach life. So, yeah.
He said things so beautiful. I mean, I suffered so much, you know, the end of his life was really awful.
Yes, it was. Yeah. He was imprisoned, right?
Yeah, he has been not in a little prison, no, he has been in the worst from the worst.
Yeah.
And no, he lose everything at the end. He was no more. He died in Paris. So it was really very. It's a
I
shame.
think I think he also embodied that philosophy that you share, which is about trying to surround your life with as much beauty as possible. And I think he embodied that as well.
Oh, yeah,
He lived
yeah,
he almost to a comical extent, extravagant, like made everything extravagant to how he dressed, his lifestyle, who he surrounded himself with, like almost to a hilarious extent. So
yes,
he overdid it on purpose at times.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I'm also you're right. I'm also a little bit like that. That's true.
yeah, yeah,
I
uh,
love Buddhism. I mean, Baudelaire was then, and I love Baudelaire. So,
yeah,
and I love the humor of the dandyism. You know, I love the irony. I love the cynical things also too. But I, I'm not only living with that. I have that, but I also like other things. You know, I think that Oscar Wilde was really very much involved in this way of thinking. You know, and it's good, but I'm a little bit different. Also, I love that, but I'm also
yeah. Can you say that Oscar Wilde quote one more time?
sorry.
Can you say that Oscar Wilde quote one more time? Uh, about the truth being a lie.
I don't understand your question. Sorry.
What was that quote you said about what was that charming thing you that Oscar Wilde said that you liked again?
Ha! At the beginning, it was the lies.
At the beginning, it was the lies. Yeah.
Ha! And he explained it. He has a philosophical explanation of that. Because he said that art was before the reality. What's impossible. But he said, when you see a landscape, it's not a landscape what you see. It's the painting what you have seen of the landscape. And you see the landscape because you have seen the painting before. He has a whole theory like that, you know. It's a very amazing, you know. But
Yep.
it looks very normal, you know, and not logical and or like fun, you know. But it's not because you can explain that in the philosophy, Greek philosophy, that you know the language have to do with we are influenced by the language. What we see, the reality is very influenced by
Yeah.
what you feel, in fact.
Yeah. That's what Wittgenstein said. It's all by our language. And my last question I have for today. So philosophy, history, and poetry, which is what we talked about. So they all claim to tell us something true about human life. All three of them do. Do you think that they are describing different kinds of truth? The three of them?
I mean, I'm going to answer Oscar Wilde. The truth is the lie. And more truths you have, more lies you have. That is the truth. It's impossible to know what is the truth. You can put many truths together, you know. It's impossible to know exactly.
It's like a bottomless pit.
It's impossible because it's a concept, the truth. And of course, there is some explanations. You can try to be close to the truth, but be sure that the truth is the truth. It's a lie. So you see, truth and lie, it's a couple.
It's like, I see it as like a bottomless pit. Each time you get closer to the truth, you realize that's not the truth. And then each time you get closer, you realize it's not. And it goes on infinitely. Yeah. And so this concludes our, so I actually need to correct myself. This is not the 7th episode. This is the 6th episode of Ideas from the New Poetry. We have one more planned episode coming next Wednesday. And I would like to close this off is just a personal appreciation from me to you, because I remember the first episode we did together on this series. You had talked about your appreciation of how precise I am, and I read something that kind of made me feel a lot more reassured about myself. I was reading. I know he's a very controversial poet, Ezra Pound, but he's important to study about. But I was reading his translations of the Confucian Odes, and I just like to read this excerpt because it has something familiar in it. So it goes, "No tool against tiger, no boat for river, that much no more, and they know it. But above all, to be precise at the gulf's edge or on thin ice." So, so that's just a personal appreciation for me, for you talking about how precise I am, and now I realize that precision is important for any poet. So I just like to thank you for that.
Thank you too. I mean, there is one word that I love very much in what you wrote. You know, what you was reading is precise.
Yeah.
I love that word. It's explaining everything of what you said.
Yeah. Above all, to be precise. Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. So this has been the 6th episode of Ideas from the New Poetry, co-hosted by Leonardo Marcos and Jon Bernys. And we will see you next time. And thank you so much for listening.